So I think there are a lot of ways that this goes well for Louisville, even if we don't end up being the winner of the battle for Atlantis.
It is a happy Thanksgiving week. We hope that it will continue to be as we ride along here on the Starting 502 podcast. Presley Meyer and Jake Hook on the other end, live from, where are you live from these days? Bowling Green, Kentucky?
Bowling Green.
Yep. Louisville, Kentucky, Bowling Green, Kentucky, here to talk about some Louisville basketball heading into the Bahamas trip. What could be a program-defining week if things are able to go well. Louisville tips off at noon to start off the battle for Atlantis at noon on Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, November 27th, against a pretty solid Indiana squad. So we'll dive in a lot into what that looks like. From Indiana's perspective, or from Louisville's perspective, how Louisville matches up with them as well. And then whether they win or lose, they play again on Thanksgiving. If they win, they will play at noon on Thanksgiving Day against the winner of Gonzaga and West Virginia, two quality squads. Jake, number one, how we doing? And number two, I mean, what's your stoke level for this game against Indiana on Wednesday?
I'm all right. My happiness is dependent on this Battle for Atlantis tournament and our football team's ability to actually beat Kentucky. So a lot riding on this week. I am excited. I think it's going to be a great test, obviously, against Indiana. And then even if you lose against Indiana, you're still probably playing West Virginia. And then if you win that game, you're probably playing Oklahoma or Providence. So, I mean, obviously I want us to win 3 games in a row and become the Battle for Atlantis champions. But all in all, I think it'll be a great test to see, a great litmus test to see where this team is going to be the rest of the year. Because we saw one game against Tennessee where we got kind of mollywopped. But then we also saw Tennessee just beat the absolute shit out of Baylor, so they just might be a wagon right now. So I think this will kind of give the fan base some good clarity as to how the rest of this season is going to look.
Yeah, Indiana, the 39th rated team on KenPom right now. I believe they're still in the top 25, though, right, Jake?
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly.
They were diving into them. They played South Carolina. I don't know what they are now. They're probably even higher.
Yeah. So when you look at their body of work so far, 19-point win over SIU Edwardsville, a 35-point win over Eastern Illinois. They hosted South Carolina and pretty much destroyed them 87-71. And then over the weekend, defeated UNC Greensboro in a pretty tough little battle, 69-58. So coming into this game against Louisville, as a 4-0 team, looking to leave 7-0, but Louisville hopes to have something to say about that. Very quickly on Indiana, offensive rating is a 113.1, which puts them at 52nd in the country. Defensively, they sit at 26th in the country. They're 87th in adjusted tempo, so they don't mind getting up and down. Average possession length is 34th nationally. On defense, the average possession length 115th nationally. So they are allowing opponents to push the pace, which I think will be an interesting storyline. Louisville does sit in KenPom very quickly at 57th, so continuing to move up in KenPom after their win over Winthrop. 87th offensively, 38 defensively, so KenPom really likes their defensive rankings. And like we said about Indiana, only 15 seconds per possession on offense, which is 20th nationally, 17.8 on defense, which is 267th nationally. So when you look at these two teams, they seem very similar on the outset, very similar stylistically. But as we begin to break this down a little bit, Jake, who are some of these guys on this Indiana team that you're looking to? Mackenzie Mbako, obviously, is the guy that Louisville fans are going to be the most familiar with just because of the recruitment during the Kenny Payne era. But, who else is standing out to you?
Yeah, Mackenzie Mbako's probably their best player last year, or this year. Sorry, not last year. I think last year it was Malik Renew, but this year I think it is Mackenzie Mbako. Most fans will know him former Duke commit. Then we all thought Kenny Payne would get him, and then we forgot Kenny Payne's completely incompetent. So he did not land him, and he ended up going to IU last year. He was all right, had some freshman struggles, scored 12 points a game, but was really inefficient, even assist-to-turnover ratio, sub 40% shooter, 33% from three. This year just cranked it up. 18 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 2 assists, still an even assist-to-turnover ratio, but field goal percentage and three-point percentage is through the roof, shooting nearly 60% from the field and 53% from three. I mean, he's 6'9", 220. He is huge. He's aggressive when he attacks the basket. He can post up, and if he's hitting threes, he's not unguardable, but he is borderline unguardable with his ability to shoot and how large he is. So I think he's definitely the largest concern, but Indiana has 4 really, really good players. They've got Miles Rice, who's a transfer from Washington State. He was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year last year. He's averaging 15 a game, 5 assists per game, also shooting 46% from three. So those two are their biggest shooters. They're the only two that are shooting above 30%, I believe, on this team from three. Indiana in general does not like to shoot a lot of threes, only 17.5 three-pointers attempted per game. So if you can guard Miles Rice and you can guard Mackenzie Mbako, you should be good. Trying to think also, they've got Malik Renew returning. He's back for year 3 at IU. He was their best player last year. He's still a really solid player. Forward, 6'9", 230, 13.5 points per game, 7 rebounds. Not a good shooter. He actually likes to shoot. He'll shoot about 1 or 2 a game. He's only shooting 20% from three, so please let him shoot. And then final dude, Oumar Ballo, who I think Cardinal fans are probably also pretty familiar with, a big that we felt good for a little bit in the offseason that we were going to land from Arizona. He ends up going to IU. Dude is just a fucking brick shit house. 7 foot, 265 pounds, ginormous. 12 points a game, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks a game, shooting 71%. He's not super talented. He's not that athletically gifted. But, I mean, there's just so little that you can do with a guy that is that large. So his biggest thing is he'll grab almost every defensive rebound and he'll block probably 10% of our shots in this game. So all in all, they've got a solid team, 7-8 deep. They've got 4 or 5 really good players. And they're huge. They're absolutely huge. Both guards, 6'3". Their 2 forwards are 6'9", and Oumar Ballo's 7 foot. So it's a little scary.
Yeah, to say the least. This is a team that's built to go deep in the March. Quick fact check, real fast, quick update. Indiana is 14th nationally. When you look across this tournament, you have Gonzaga. So if Louisville does win, most likely facing Gonzaga. They are rated 3rd nationally. And then just going down the list really fast. You got Arizona at 24th.
I don't know how they're ranked. They're 2-2. That makes no sense, but I guess that they've lost to 2 good teams.
The people believe. Well, and yeah, that's the thing, right? Like the 10-year-old always comes to me and he's like, "How is Alabama ranked? They have 3 losses." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but they also beat Georgia." So, like, you know, it's all about, I guess, the theory of relativity, right? I'm trying to just very quickly parse through some of these teams. Let's see. Looks like that's it as far as top 25 rankings. So you have Arizona and Gonzaga, who would be a fantastic challenger. Before we get to that, though, how does Louisville win this game? How does Louisville beat Indiana? As you pointed out a little bit, I mean, I think it starts with rebounding, but, you know, what points of emphasis are you making if you're the Louisville staff?
Yeah, surprisingly, they don't actually rebound all that well for how huge they are. They're really good at defensive rebounding. They're winning like 122-79, but they've given up 53 offensive rebounds and they've only grabbed 36 themselves. So offensive rebounding is kind of a weakness for them, which is surprising. But they limit teams to one shot like so often. I mean, it's one shot, it's one tough shot. And then it's Oumar Ballo grabbing his 12th rebound of the game. Indiana is a really solid team. They're a good 3-point shooting team with those 2 players that we talked about, Miles Rice and Mackenzie Mbako, but those are the only 2 dudes. So if you let anyone else shoot threes, you're content there. Just from an offense standpoint, they're 15th in the nation in field goal percentage because they attack the basket. They shoot from mid-range and they post up. Like they take as close. They want to shoot as close to the basket as possible. And they've got some really aggressive drivers and Mackenzie Mbako and different players like that. So I think on offense, just Louisville has to be big. Louisville has to limit them to one possession. On defense for Louisville's side. Louisville has to be big, has to be aggressive, has to limit them to one possession, has to stay in front of your man because they do want to get to the basket. They use a ton of on-ball screens. So just really good communication and just ending possessions after one shot, I think will be huge. For Louisville's offensive side, Indiana is a solid defensive team as well. They move really well as a team. They stay in front of their man really well. And when they do get beat, Umar Ball is right there, averaging nearly 3 blocks a game. He's going to affect almost every shot that he can. Louisville's going to have to make threes. Like, I don't foresee us scoring a ton of points in the paint against this team. They're so big, and then they have Ballo right there at the rim to stop every shot that comes in there. So I think it's going to have to be a lot of penetration, kick out, and actually hit the open threes that we've been taking. But yeah, I mean, they're a solid defensive team for sure. They're not super physical, but I think it's going to come down to Louisville being solid on defense, which I think we've seen, and honestly, us knocking down threes, which we have not seen.
Yeah. I think that it's going to come down to especially pushing the pace, maybe, creating a few extra possessions for yourself and converting on those extra possessions. I mean, I think that's a big thing we talked about last week was, this team is very good at forcing turnovers, but they haven't been great at scoring on the break. And then I think, Louisville's going to have to make Indiana play into their hands a little bit. And the way to do that is to bring their bigs away from the basket. So, you have some mobile bigs. You have some bigs that can shoot the ball. So say you have Case and Pryor and no Waterman in the game at the same time. That could be a good matchup for Louisville offense versus defense because somebody's going to have to come out away from the basket, which is going to open some driving lanes for other players. I would like to see if that's the case. I mean, I would assume that's what Louisville's going to try to do. And if that's the case, you need to see Chucky Hepburn be the best player on the floor. You need to see, Javon Hadley, Terrence Edwards. Like, these guys need to be getting to the basket more than they are right now. If not, then, I know Louisville's going to shoot a lot of threes, and I think everybody's resigned themselves to that. But especially if you're not hitting threes, then there's going to be no way to really facilitate that offense because they're just going to let you keep bricking threes and, take 45 of them, and they'll be totally content with you making, 13, 14 threes if you're taking 35 plus, right? Like, that's a recipe for victory, in my opinion, especially for a Louisville team that doesn't rebound very well thus far. So what is your very quick – I was just going to say, very quick aside, I'm looking to see, if this is something where Corin Johnson can't play for the entire tournament. What's the strategy for Louisville going forward? Do they just continue trotting Terrence Edwards out there as the secondary guard? I mean, does Rain Smith play some point guard? Like, I'm not sure that that's going to cut it against some of these higher level opponents. But I mean, would that be kind of your take on it? Is, Chucky plays 32 minutes and then you just have a combination of the other guards running the point for, the other 8 to 10 minutes he's not on the floor?
Yeah, I think it's a huge concern, and I don't think it's anything that we've gotten any clarity on either. We don't know if if he's back next game. We don't know if he's gone for a month. We have no idea. Right. I think it is going to be a big, very large deal for the rest of the season, but particularly for this tournament. Corin is one of the few dudes we've seen be able to get to the basket, create his own shot. So it will be huge. In the meantime, until he returns, I think you're right. Chucky's going to have to play elevated minutes, probably looking at least 32 a night. Terrence on ball, like 3 guard. Javon Hadley maybe playing a little bit more point forward. I would say this is where Abubakar would step in, but obviously injured as well. So loses you there. I think that we could see Rain Smith be a little bit more of a facilitator. I know he's been almost exclusively a 3-point shooter, and that's kind of all he's done. He's done a little bit driving to the basket if guys play off of his shot. But I think we could see Rain Smith be a little bit more of a ball handler, but I think you're right. It's going to be Chucky for 90% of the game. And when he's off the court, it's just going to be little doses of Javon at point, little doses of Terrence Edward at point, little doses of Rain facilitating. And we're just going to have to get by until Corin Johnson comes back, unfortunately.
Chucky Hepburn, is Rain Smith your best player right now? Like,
Yeah.
I think through 4
Yes.
games,
Yes.
he's your leading scorer. He is doing what he was billed to be, plus more. Like, he's been a solid defender. He's been a good rebounder. He's played within his own game. He's, taken what the opponent gives him. He's been unabashedly, a shooter that shoots at any time, at any point in an offensive set, including on the break. He's been what this team has needed. But I don't think that that's what wins you 20, 25 games. I really don't. I think that Rain needs to. I don't want Rain to take a step down in his performance in any way, but I'm just suggesting that I think other players need to step up and be a little bit more of a primary ball handler and leader on this team. I think Chucky Hepburn's been very good, especially situationally. But I'd like to see the offense run even more through him. I think the issue that Louisville's going to run into, though, and this is kind of where we get into, what day 2 and day 3 could look like. The issue is going to be if he is playing 32 minutes a game, which he hasn't so far. That's going to be really difficult 3 days in a row, right? Like you could be looking at, if you win game 1, you're turning right back around and playing 22 hours later. And then, if you lose game 1, then you have 2 extra hours of rest, essentially. And then, after that, it gets a little bit hairy about the way that things could fall. But, you could be looking at back-to-back days of 30 plus minutes for your starting point guard against some of the best competition in the country, teams that do a really good job of getting to the bucket, that really push you, that will kind of press the envelope a little bit. So, I know other teams have to do the same thing, but is that a concern to you at all? That say Louisville needs Chucky for 36 minutes to beat Indiana, and then they have to turn around and do the same thing against Gonzaga. Like, that's a tall task, right?
Yeah, I think obviously night 1, Chucky's good for 35 if he needs to. I think even night 2, good for 35. But by night 3, your legs are going to be gone, and it's going to show from a shooting standpoint. So yeah, I think we need. I think you're right. I think that Rain has been our best player, obviously scoring wise, but also just consistency. Like every game, he has came in and he has been the same player. He has knocked down open threes. He has facilitated when he needs to. He has played on-ball defense at an above-average level. Like he has been the same dude every single game, as opposed to Terrence Edwards, Cason Pryor, even Javon Hadley, who's been more consistent recently. Like we haven't really known what we're going to get from them on a game-to-game basis. So seeing more consistency. I liked what I saw from Noah Waterman also on the defensive side. I know his foot speed is ass. I know he's going to get blown by people. I was unaware that he was as effective as a rim protector as he was in that Winthrop game. And it's Winthrop, so maybe that's what it is. But I was at least impressed and encouraged by that, because if he can get us a block and a half a game, that is something this team so desperately needs.
Yeah, you're going to have to see a lot. You're going to have to see guys continuing to step up. And I think that once you get to day 3 of this tournament, that's when you really start to learn a lot about this team, because they're just going to be playing on, running on fumes by the second half of the third game, right? Like that is a tough adjustment to make. It's something that they won't be asked to do for the rest of the season, but they're going to find out what they're made of pretty quickly. So,
I was going to say also, Kenai Ruths. I was really impressed with his game against Winthrop. He does not play like a freshman. I think he makes freshman mistakes, makes freshman decisions, but his aggressiveness and his lack of fear that he shows, I think is big. And I think is a player that's going to have to play probably, 8-10 minutes a game, especially since Traore is out right now. So hoping to see continued growth from Kenai over these next 3 games.
Yeah, I've noticed, people that aren't super well versed in Louisville basketball, and they're just at the games or picking up on things as we go. A lot of comments like, "Oh, Kenai Bruce was a great find. Like, where'd he transfer in from?" We're like, "No, he's a true freshman," and I think that speaks volumes, right? That's
The one and only.
He is probably the most athletic player on this team. He plays fearlessly for what his game is. And I think the coaching staff and his teammates have a lot of confidence in him. And I think that, we talked about this a little bit, but he wasn't billed as a shooter coming in, but he's a very confident shooter. And now, I mean, I really like his game. I'd like to see him continue to play 10 to 15 minutes a game and really try to, figure out what his role is on this roster, while essentially Louisville's starter at power forward is out for the next probably 4 to 5 more weeks, right? So that'll be interesting to watch. And I mean, look, this could be a situation where, maybe I'm, just hoping to hope here, but I think you could see, I have no information on this, but if Corin Johnson comes back, then it's game on, right? Because this team has kind of learned how to play with a consolidated lineup a little bit. But I think that gave the team an opportunity in the last game to really kind of, get a little bit more experience playing together. I think that's a huge thing is, I mean, you look across these lineups and there are very few lineups that have played together more than, 3-4 minutes a game. So really it's going to be about that cohesiveness and, figuring out what works the best. I think that what Jacob and I suggested, a couple of weeks ago has come to fruition, that there are certain players that you cannot have on the floor at the same time, or else it really limits you as a team. And I think that's coming to fruition a little bit. And I think that in the Bahamas, it's going to be a great opportunity to see, what this, kind of the back half of this roster is made of, right? Like the guys that aren't starters, but that might have to, for whatever reason, play a little bit more. Like, is there cramping? Is there, mental fatigue? Are there, silly mistakes happening and that you have to bring somebody else in for a little bit to kind of supplement that? So, there's a lot to look forward to with this, but I think one thing that, I mean, if Louisville is fortunate enough to escape with a win against IU, like we suggested, Gonzaga is your reward. So
What
Gonzaga
a
on
lovely early Christmas present.
Gonzaga on a basically 1 day turnaround. So what's that look like if it is Gonzaga? Does Louisville have a chance in hell of beating a team like that? A team that's third in the country. Let's just take a peek really quick at Palm as well, just to see exactly what they're looking like. How do I get back out just to the?
Yeah, I was gonna
Give me the
say
full rankings. Gonzaga
has
seventh,
looked incredible.
second in the country in Ken Palm, only to Houston. They're 5-0 on the season. Number 1 offensive rated team in the country. Number 19 on defense. 84th in adjusted tempo. Obviously a lot of things to like about this team, as always, with a Mark Few team. Started out the season by beating Baylor 101-63. They beat Arizona State by 8. Destroyed UMass Lowell. Beat San Diego State by 13. And destroyed Long Beach State. So, that's they're projected as a 90% chance that they beat West Virginia. So that is that's an absolute unit of a team. Tell me a little bit more about what they bring to the table.
Yeah, Gonzaga is looking as good as any team in the nation. The 2 teams that impressed me the most this year have been Gonzaga and Tennessee. Unfortunately, we are, and Kentucky as well. Kentucky's really impressed me. They are 2 of the teams. Actually, all 3 of the teams we're going to have to play in the first 10 games of the year, possibly. So not looking forward to them. I think we match up a little bit better against Gonzaga, than we do Indiana, though I think Gonzaga is a better team than Indiana. They are a little less physical. They are a little smaller. They are a little bit more free-flowing, more reliant on three-point shooting. But, I mean, they've looked great in every game. They beat Baylor by 50. I mean, that's just so freaking impressive. They've got a lot of good players, but they've got a big 3. Graham Ike, dude is averaging 15 points and 6 rebounds a game. You know how many minutes he's playing? Average, just, 15 points, 6.5 rebounds. How many minutes do you think he's playing a game?
I haven't looked at minutes numbers, but I would say less than 20.
Yeah, 17 minutes a game. And he's scoring a point a minute, which is insane. He's a great player. I know Louisville was interested in him at one point. He's a versatile big. He's huge. He shoots mid to low 30s from threes, but has enough of a jump shot to where you have to guard him out there. They also have their transfer, Khalif Battle from Arkansas, who's more of a volume scorer. He's putting up 14 a game, but he's shooting really well this year, 46% from three. And then, as I always say, the straw that stirs the drink, Ryan Nembhard, been there for a while. I saw this stat. He's averaging 12 points a game, which isn't like crazy impressive. 9.5 assists per game. That's unheard of at the college level. Like if you're averaging 5+ in college, you're a solid playmaker. He's averaging 9.5 assists per game and shooting 44% from three. So they're a unit. Would love to see us play them. I doubt it would go very well just with how well they're playing. But again, I mean, this Louisville team, if they're shooting well, can beat anybody. So I would never say never.
What if they have to face West Virginia? I mean, on paper, it seems like a little bit better matchup, but West Virginia is a team that's real quality defensively. What stands out to you about them?
Yeah, I would obviously, if we win, we're likely to play Gonzaga. If we lose, we're very likely to play West Virginia. They've looked mid this year to start. They're 3-1. They beat Iona. They beat Robert Morris. They beat UMass. The one team that they played that's a quality D1 team is Pittsburgh. They lost by 24. They've got DeVries as their new head coach, and they've got his son Tucker, who's surprisingly not playing all that well, only averaging 13.5 per game. I figured he'd come right in and he'd average 17, 18, just like he did at Drake last year. They also have Javon Small, who's transferred from Oklahoma State, really solid guard, really good three-point shooter. He's averaging 15.5 per game. They're a really good shooting team. They've got like 4 dudes, I think, shooting better than 40%. They're nearly shooting 40% as a team. So like you said, a good shooting team. They're not nearly the quality that Gonzaga is or Arizona is. I feel pretty good if we play against a West Virginia on day 2 that we should be able to get a win there, but nothing's guaranteed.
Another high-paced team. Ken Palm has them as the 99th best offensive efficiency in the country, 66 in defensive efficiency. They push the pace. 15.7 seconds per offensive possession, 18.0 seconds per defensive possession. Again, we're seeing a trend with a lot of these teams in this tournament, right? That they don't mind getting up and down. They don't mind, pushing the pace a little bit. Starting lineup and the most played lineup for Gonzaga is Javon Small, Sincere Harris, Jonathan Powell, Toby O'Connie, and Amani Hansberry. So
was that for Gonzaga or West Virginia?
For West Virginia. I'm sorry if I said Gonzaga.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. I was like, whoa, I don't know. I know some of those dudes. They're not on Gonzaga.
Ryan Nembhard, Nicole Hickman, Dusty Stromer, Michael Ajayi, and Graham Ike. Is it Ike or Ike? I think you said Ike, didn't you?
I say Ike. I don't really know 100%.
And then Braden Huff is their backup big man this year. For those who haven't seen any Gonzaga basketball, Khalif Battle is a guy that comes off the bench, as you suggested, but he's fantastic. So yeah, it's been it's been a pretty impressive start to the season for Gonzaga, a team that's not afraid to play some really good opponents in the non-conference at this point. And I think one storyline to get into as well is that this is a tournament where you kind of have to bring your own juice, if you will. And this is something that Louisville's done, right? Like they already made the trip down a few months ago, played a couple teams in the Bahamas in the same place where they're going to be playing this week. So they've already become acclimated to ballroom basketball. They know what the trip's like. They treated it like a business trip last time. They didn't go down and do any of the fun stuff before. They saved all that for afterwards. So anything to be taken from that? Like, does Louisville have any sort of advantage at all by having played in this ballroom already this season?
We are an empty hotel ballroom shooting team. That's what I've always said. I mean, we did shoot our best, granted against inferior competition, but we did shoot our best in this gym. We have yet to be able to replicate that kind of shooting since we played at the Yum Center. So hopefully there's something there. I don't think that it can hurt that we've been here before and that we kind of understand the routines and understand how this gym plays in front of that kind of weird, 100-person crowd, different depth perception than the Yum Center or any college athletic center plays. So, I mean, it definitely can't hurt. I can't imagine it gives us too much of an advantage, but it certainly can't hurt that we just did this 2-3 months. I guess, oh, good Lord, we're almost in December, 3-4 months ago now.
Yep.
So yeah, it definitely can't hurt. I think biggest thing is we need to see this team shoot well. I think I saw it. We're shooting like 29% as a team from three. We've got two dudes shooting 40%, Javon Hadley, Rain Smith. Everyone else is basically 30% or worse. And I don't think that anybody thinks that really anyone on this team outside of Abubakar Traore and Frank Anselmi should be less than like a 35% three-point shooter. So just hopefully positive regression comes into play soon. Because if this team shoots like this all year long, we're not a tournament team. We're probably 500 at best, maybe. So really hoping that the shooting turns around. And I think that it will. I think we know that we have quality shooters on this team. So it's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, I mean, this team was recruited as a quality shooting team. I think that you see that in their confidence in taking threes. But I think that, what teams are going to play for is for Louisville to take threes that are out of rhythm, right? Like we talked about this after Tennessee. It seems to kind of be a trend so far this year that it's not that they're taking bad threes, it's that they're not taking threes necessarily within the flow of the offense. Like they're not 100% comfortable at the timing of when they should shoot threes. And I think once that clicks and once guys get used to playing with one another and, get to that point where they've gained that requisite experience, I think it'll be a little bit different. But you're right. Like the shots have to start falling, or you don't have a chance of. I mean, there's a very good chance you could walk out of this tournament 0-3, and that would be incredibly unfortunate. If Louisville does win, so I just had this up in front of me, and now it is gone. If they win, they play. Just want to fact check this because I do not want to share the wrong information. If they win, they play.
You talking about the second game?
At noon. The second game, they play at noon. So game 1, noon, against Indiana on ESPN. Game 2, if they win, noon on ESPN against the winner of Gonzaga and West Virginia. If they lose, then they play the loser of Gonzaga and West Virginia at 2:30 on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving plans will be developed around whether or not Louisville wins game 1. That could definitely affect the rest of your week for sure. And then the championship game, if Louisville was to advance, would be the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, November 29th at 5:30 on ESPN. If say they lost game 2, let's see here. Sorry. If they lost game 2, which is actually game 5, this is very confusing. Oh, here we go. Okay, so they would play at 3:00 on Black Friday. So that would be the third place game. The other side of the bracket features Oklahoma, Providence, Davidson, and Arizona. Among those 4 teams, who do you think is the best matchup for Louisville? Like, if say Louisville loses 2 times in a row, who are you wanting to see them face?
I mean, I think it would, not that it would be a great game, but Davidson, I think, is kind of clearly the worst of the bunch out of these guys. So I guess if we lose both, I would want to get some sort of a confidence building game there and win at least one game, not go 0-3. But I do think in general that this tournament provides a really good opportunity for positivity, because if you win game 1, you beat a top 15 Indiana team. It'll be difficult to beat Gonzaga. So if you lose to Gonzaga, that's understandable. And then you'll play Arizona or Oklahoma or Providence. And hopefully you win that when you go 2-1. If we lose to Indiana, we can still beat West Virginia, who's a decent team, and then probably have a chance to beat Oklahoma or Providence. So I think there are a lot of ways that this goes well for Louisville, even if we don't end up being the winner of the battle for Atlantis, because I think that's likely to be Gonzaga with how they're playing right now. There's still a lot of ways for us to come out and be positive and not be completely distraught that we didn't win the battle for Atlantis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure anybody's expecting Louisville to win the whole thing. If they do, it would be a massive, massive upset.
Huge.
So I mean, look, if they win the whole thing, like, it's on, baby. Like, this is the official kickoff of the new era. You come back and you're playing a top 25 Ole Miss team against a coach that you kind of, have a recent history with, right? And then, you get into, Duke, Kentucky, like all of a sudden, things start changing and clicking really fast.
Yeah,
So
I really think it's huge that we leave this tournament with positive momentum, whether that is a win over Indiana and a win over Arizona or Oklahoma, or it's a loss at Indiana, but then it's 2 wins to end the tournament. I think that it will be big for us to leave this tournament with positive momentum, because as soon as we come back, it's more incredible games, like you said, really, really tough competition. Would also just love to see the same aggression that we saw with Javon Hadley in that Winthrop game. I thought that's the best and most aggressive he's been. And I think right now
definitely.
Louisville needs that with no Corin Johnson, and with Terrence and Kaysen kind of hit or miss with how well they're playing. And God, I would love some more consistency from those two. I think if we can just
Yeah.
get one of those two going each night, I think we're fine. Unfortunately, both of them have not gotten it going in a couple of games already this year.
Yeah, it's hard to say who that guy needs to be that really steps up. But I think so far you can only take away what we've seen, right? And I think that there's three real main components so far that have kind of been carrying the load, with that being Chucky Hepburn, Rain Smith, and then Case and Pryor. I think those are really the three guys that have carried the water for this team so far. Um, and then everybody else has kind of been a role player of sorts, right? Like Noah Waterman has absolutely been a role player, and he's done a lot of, we talked about this. He does a lot of stuff that, it sounds cliche, but doesn't stand out on paper as much, right? Like um, he affects shots coming into the lane quite a bit. He's very aggressive. He plays within the flow of the offense well, makes a lot of good hustle plays. He doesn't do a lot of things great, though. Like, he has a great shooting stroke, but he hasn't been knocking down a lot of shots. For his size, he's not been a very good rebounder, but he has blocked a lot of shots, picked up some steals, made a lot of hustle plays. So I'd like to see a guy like that potentially take the next step forward, like you suggested. I think that Javon Hadley could be that guy that we see step up in this tournament. And then, if Corin Johnson comes back, obviously, I would love to see him kind of step into the role that he had assumed for the first couple of games of the season. Ultimately, whoever the ball handlers are, you got to see them be a little bit more aggressive. And then Terrence Edwards, right, is the guy that I think the main thing that you need out of Terrence Edwards is a consistent presence. I think he's
Mhm.
still learning to be, he was a role player for 2 years for James Madison, and then last year had a massive breakout season. But I think that you'd like to see Terrence Edwards learn how to assume that, like, second or third guy on the team mentality, and learn how to play within this system in that manner. I think that a lot of the times when he's gotten hot is he's just knocking down a lot of threes from deep. And I think that you need to see him become a little bit more of an aggressor as a distributor, or as a guy getting to the bucket. Like, he needs to be that creative playmaker that we saw at James Madison. We've seen a lot less of that so far this season. So, I mean, is that a fair assessment of Fat?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's been a lack of consistency, and then outside of, if he's shooting well that night, then it's a good night for him. But if it's not, he's really not impacting the game in a positive way, and he's shooting probably shots that he shouldn't when he's already 2 of 10 on the day or whatever. So yeah, I think we need more consistency. The thing I've noticed with this team, we saw such a fluid offense in those first few games, exhibitions, before we played Tennessee, essentially. The last few games, our offenses seem so bogged down, and I think it all comes back to our inability to get past our man and get into the paint. Because what makes this
Hmm.
offense so effective is being able to get to the paint, kick to the corner, swing past wing, swing past top of the key. Great, good shot turns into great shot. That thing. And if no one is able to get past their man, and if no one is able to get into the paint and collapse that defense, those open shots aren't there. Those extra swings that turn a good shot into a great shot aren't even possible, because you're just standing around the perimeter, not beating your man, kicking it to the wing, trying to beat your man, not beating him, kicking it to the next player. And
Hmm.
so I just think that we need to see guys like Terrence Edwards, guys like Kason Pryor, guys like Chucky Hepburn beating their man and getting into the paint, because I think that's the
Hmm.
key that opens up this offense, sees us getting better shots, sees us hitting more threes, everything like that.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I think, even though this isn't necessarily the nature of this team, I think that you have to continue feeding the ball to James Scott when he's there. I mean, look, dude is 16 for 18 on the season. Like
Shooting like
he's
90%.
made, yeah, 89% so far on the season. So, number 27 in the country in block percentage. Noah Waterman is also 111th in block percentage, and Kason Pryor is 134th in block percentage. So those are all very, very good numbers. So overall, your bigs are defending really well down low, even against some, pretty large opponents, right? So I think what you want to see next is getting the ball to them down low a little bit more. 2-point field goals, Kason Pryor only attempted 15 all season, but he's made 9 of them. Noah Waterman has only attempted 4 2-point field goals all season and made 3. So it's like, you look across the board here. Terrence Edwards is the only guy really getting to the basket. He's 14 for 22 from the 2-point range. Chucky Hepburn, 9 for 14. I mean, you got a guy like Rain Smith. He's attempted 2-point shots and 38 3-point shots so far this season. And I think that he's a guy that could absolutely get to the bucket a little bit more, but he hasn't seemed super confident around the rim yet. So, yeah, that's something to watch for as well. I understand this team is going to lend itself more towards 3-point shooting, but you already kind of went over what the numbers look like a little bit, Jake. But Rain Smith 42% from 3, Javon Hadley 40% from 3, but a smaller sample size. But everybody else, Kason Pryor 3 for 20, Connie Roos 2 for 8, Chucky Hepburn 4 for 15, Terrence Edwards 6 for 20, and he's third best on the team. So again, not great. Noah Waterman 5 for 18. So like these dudes are letting it fly and they're not hitting shots. Like that's a recipe for losses against literally any team in this tournament. Like you will, if you shoot like that, you will lose every game in this tournament, 100%. So it's either the volume needs to decrease, the shot selection needs to get better, or you just need to start knocking them down. Like it's as simple as that. If you can't do that, then the identity of this team is going to be the team that can't shoot but still shoots a lot. And so I think the coaching staff is letting them work their way through it a little bit. But I think until it could be something that maybe starts clicking this week, right? Like when you play 3 games in 3 days, maybe there's some fatigue there, but maybe there's also an opportunity to really get some game action without some lapses in time, right? Like you had to wait 10 days between Tennessee and Morehead State, right? So they played after Tennessee.
Winthrop, right? After Morehead, wasn't it Morehead State, then Tennessee, then Winthrop? Or I could be getting it all confused.
I don't know. Why are we forgetting this already? What's going on? Let's see.
My mother smoked a lot of cigarettes when I was in the womb, so that's my
Bellarmine.
excuse.
We just totally skipped over Bellarmine.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's
there's
it.
10 days between Tennessee and Bellarmine, then 3 days between Bellarmine and Winthrop. Statistically, they became a little bit better just because of the cohesiveness and consistency of playing, a couple of games kind of back to back. So, I think there's a lot less game planning and a lot more just instinctive thinking in these sorts of scenarios. And so this is a great chance for Louisville to grow together as a team. And I think it all starts on Wednesday at noon against Indiana. What's your prediction here, Jake? Do you think that Louisville pulls this one off, or what's it look like for you?
I actually meant to go to DraftKings and see what the spread was. I figured that Indiana was nothing yet.
No spread yet.
Really, that's surprising to
So,
me. Yeah, I imagine Indiana will probably be 6.5, 7-point favorites. Just throwing numbers out in the air. I think Indiana wins this game. I think they win by probably 6 or 8 points. I just haven't seen that offensive fluidity that we had seen early in the year. And Indiana is so big. We're not going to be able to be effective in the paint. If we shoot well, obviously, I think we can win this game by 10, 15. I keep saying that every podcast, and then we proceed to not shoot well again. So my gut feeling tells me probably like Indiana 82, Louisville 74. I really hope that I'm wrong, though.
Yeah, so I mean, you're pretty close to what Ken Palm has it as. He has a 77-74 Indiana, gives Louisville a 39% chance of winning. Look, I don't think Louisville pulls this one off. I think that their defense is showing that it's actually ahead of the offense, which is surprising. Like I thought that, we thought that this would be a solid defensive team, but it might take a little bit
Mhm.
of time to get acclimated. But really, I mean, the defense looked against the best team you played all year. The defense looked pretty solid against Tennessee. Really, where teams are scoring and taking advantage is on second chance opportunities. I mean, if you look at the Winthrop game, I mean, the only time that the opponent was scoring was when you were allowing them to get offensive rebounds and putbacks or open 3-point shots. So Louisville's the getting that first stop. Louisville has been really really quality in that area. I think this is a Tennessee team though that Louisville has not shown enough as a rebounding team, or their chops as being a good rebounding team have not been there yet, and they've not been able to knock down shots at the rate that we thought that they would. Could that change in the ballroom setting with a lack of crowd and sight lines and all of that kind of stuff? Perhaps, but I don't. It doesn't make me confident enough to say that I think Louisville's going to win this game. But if I had to make a prediction, let's say it's going to be a little bit lower scoring. I'm going to go 78-68 Indiana. I think that Louisville will go on to play West Virginia in game 2. And in that game, I'm thinking that Louisville has a really good chance of winning. Louisville actually about 10 spots higher than West Virginia in the Ken Palm rankings. I think that's a game where, as you said, Jake, they could lose the first one and then beat like West Virginia and Davidson or West Virginia and Providence, right? And I think that's still a good turnout. And you come back home, and that would put you at 5-2 on the season, right? And that's fine.
Mhm.
If Louisville beats Indiana, though, like all bets are off. Like it's you know you have nothing to lose against Gonzaga, and we see this in these preseason tournaments every year. There's always weird, wild games when you play 3 games in 3 days in a hotel ballroom in front of nobody. Like weird stuff happens all the time. Um, so I'm excited to
Yep.
to see, what could potentially happen. Any other thoughts on overall overarching takeaways as we're heading into the Bahamas?
Yeah, I just repeat what I said earlier. We have to use this as continuing positive momentum. If we go 0-3, it's going to destroy, I think, team
Mhm.
morale, fan morale, really everything. So we need to see probably a 2-1 finish in this, at least a 1-2 at the worst. But even if it's 1-2 and the only team you beat is Davidson, I don't really think anyone's going to be too pumped about that. Other big thing that I noticed watching Indiana play, they switch everything. When you do ball screens and you do off ball screens, they try to switch everything 1 through 4, except for Umar Ballo. If you set a ball screen on Umar Ballo, he is playing drop coverage, and his big ass is not getting past the free throw line. So I think that is something that hopefully Pat Kelsey sees. Hopefully Louisville realizes. Like if I have James Scott ball screen for Chucky Hepburn, a pull up mid range, pull up 3-point shot is going to be there. And I think
Mhm.
I'm confident, especially like Rain or Chucky or Corin if he's back. If we can get those kinds of guards in on ball screens, I think that can be a huge offensive boon for us. So there's a chance, like you said, weird things can happen in these tournaments. If Louisville starts knocking down threes like we think they can, I think they've got a chance against anybody.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? Like shooting heals all wounds, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so far, you've seen a lot of Louisville's weaknesses because they're not hitting shots.
Yeah, we're
Like
infecting our
nobody,
wounds.
right? We're in it's not been something where you're seeing them take a bunch of bad shots or try to force the issue at all, but it just might not be something where they're quite comfortable with each other yet. And I think that's natural when you have 13 completely new players on this team. So that's going to do it for us. Make sure you catch Louisville, Indiana on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I think most people are going to be off work or finishing up work for the long weekend. So ESPN, get to your TVs. Until next time, at Pressmeyer on Twitter, at Jake Hook. Jake? Do you have a Threads?
I do not have a threads.
Mm,
I've
yeah,
thought about it.
you got a blue sky?
No, I've thought about it all, but like I don't know. I just feel like I'm on Twitter. I've got a decent following there. I don't want to have to like post things on Twitter and then
Mhm.
post things on Blue Sky and then post things on Threads or whatever. So I'll probably just stick to Twitter, even though it is a cesspool at times. But I don't know. I guess I could be convinced if enough Louisville sports media accounts get made.
Yeah. Someone needs to uh, create something where if you click on like an app or something where if you click on their Twitter, you can see their Blue Sky, which
Mm.
I didn't even know about that until like last week. So
Just makes me think
apparently
of
we'll
Electric
watch
Light
that.
Orchestra. That's all I think of when I hear it. Just it makes me think of the song Mr. Blue Sky.
So yeah, if you're on Blue Sky or you're on Threads, I think that somebody should make something where we can all just transfer over to these things.
Mhm.
I really don't know. I don't know enough about them. So if it's political or something, I'm not really sure. I just see that people are congregating over there, but we are still very active on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now. So there you can find me at Pressmeyer. You can find Jake at UofL_updates. You can find us at starting 502. And as the mothership at the state of Lou on Twitter and the state of Louisville on Instagram. Until next time, let's get out of here and go Card. Let's go 3-0. Come on, let's do it.
Go Cards.